There's a certain dissipation of focus that happens the minute you leave a proscenium area, a proscenium theater. The minute you take it outside, all that energy that does this is just floating all around. And it's up to the performer to stay in the moment and to perform it with all the intensity that they would if they were in lights on the stage.
There's something about performance art that it can be very exciting if you don't really know what's going on. You just have to kind of trust the process, and that's hopefully with enough organization and guiding of the audience, they're going to be experiencing something that they haven't before.
Theater and dance and music and visual art and film and all of those things are so interrelated that we really can't separate them. So no matter what you're watching or what you're experiencing, it is an experience, it's a holistic thing. But the thing about this one was great to see the way of creating ritualistic movement and then breaking away from that and going back to it.
I think the venue is vital in dance. Depending on where you're sitting, you're getting a completely different interpretation of the dance. And that's cool, can be exciting. Dance is very different in the studio. Even if you're going to a theater space, but with Brave New World, into really a living environment.
I had this friend, Clark Brown, who worked with a theater company in Massachusetts. And I went out to visit, and they had just finished Mother Courage in the farm fields, out in some farm fields. The audience was out there. And I thought, well, that's impressive. And the next play I went to see them do was the massacre in Deerfield, Massachusetts. And they'd written 2 shows. And one was the Pioneers, and one was the Indians, and you had to go 2 nights to see them both, and they culminated on site at those log cabins that are still there today, or whatever rebuilt, and the massacre happens, and there's all around you, there's smoke and scalpings and cannons and muskets going off and screaming, and I was floored, and I thought, this is the coolest thing I've ever seen in my life. Well, they come up with this idea to do Brave New World, and they say, we want you to do the birthing scene, where would you do it? And I said, well, obviously in water. And the show never happened, but what I showed them of what I wanted to do for the birthing scene, for growing human beings, full-grown alpha males and females, full-grown in a laboratory experience based in a pool, they loved it. And Clark said, you keep this, this is interesting, this is good. And here we are now, almost 40 years later, maybe 37 years later.
Birth is about liquid. It's about that kind of initial shock into air from this liquid kind of floating state. So that was his original, that's where this has been, this whole concept of Brave New World. So this is, the adaptation that he's doing now with Chayla and Denise and myself is, I think it's a vehicle to be able to put into reality this vision of Brave New World and this birthing scene into reality.
I have a great faculty because they're very collaborative and we work really well together and there's a whole lot of trust. So we embarked on this journey to do something new. There were really three entities in the show, and the three entities were the audience, the performer, and the futuristic society. And where those three circles overlap, that's Brave New World. So Brave New World became this code word for this concept of a form of theater that used the audience as part of its production. This was a futuristic society that had been basically brainwashed and molded to think certain ways and have certain social concepts and to let go of certain things. So for us, we started in the pool and we went to 3 locations on campus. We walked the audience around. We divided them into 3 groups so it wasn't too crowded at one site, and then we all met back at the pool.
In terms of the 3 different locations, we ended up story-wise breaking it up into the different casts, which Huxley does within his novel. There are different casts of society, and they are birthed differently. There's no more natural birth. They're all birthed artificially, and they are, some of the higher castes are born individually, but the lower castes are all clones of each other. And the alphas and the betas are the 2 castes that are individually born. They're full human beings and they're fully developed. And Denise's interpretation of alpha and Chayla's interpretation of beta are slightly different from what are in the book, but it still keeps the essence of it.
It was extremely difficult to pull it off and to figure out how to make it smooth and how to make it work. We had original music from Alex Sturdfeld-Dunn from the Music School of Music. He's brilliant. It was wonderful, and the Media Resource Center stepped in and did all the film materials, which we've done. We've worked together for years, and I totally trust whatever they do. That's kind of where it started. The point of the pool was to keep the story tighter. It had to start the story and it had to conclude the story. I had never done a choreography in a swimming pool before. There was a swimming pool here on campus. It had bleachers, which means we could have an audience. I had people floating in tubes in the water, covered up with a mesh as fetal birthing pods with blinking lights flashing in them. This was specifically alpha people, the top, fit, brightest, best alphas. It was wonderful enough to float them in the pool with blinking lights and doctors in the pool with blinking lights all around them and set up this scene, but something had to develop in there. And the breathing apparatuses were really interesting because instead of being birthed from the center of the tube up, which that starts, they went down and came up floating face down. Now, it's only a matter of time before you realize they have to be breathing because they're not coming up for air. We were in the shallow end, but I had small scuba tanks so they could come out of those tubes during the birthing sequence. And we flipped them over when we took that regulator out of their mouth. It was the first breath of life. Very poignant, powerful moments in the pool. behind the pool and behind the performance was a 24-foot wide screen with the coolest movie in the world. I just loved what happened. Now the 3 sections that were off on those locations were dance, so there was no language spoken by the performers. The amazing Sam Raimi was the voiceover on the soundtrack saying the phrases that we wanted this futuristic world to say.
Be calm, take soul. Outward bursts of emotion are full.
And he just sounded fantastic. So the dances supported the concept that this futuristic society had problems. I mean, from a philosophical standpoint, you could almost say that technology can be a type of incision on the brain, a type of lobotomy. It could actually take something away from our humanity, which I believe Aldous Huxley himself was writing about. They didn't touch each other. There was no depth. They didn't really care about each other. They were just thrilled by the contact. It was very frivolous contact. It was nothing profound. There was no more family. There was no more meaningful relationships. There was no more making babies. That happened in the pool.
My section are the clones. So I decided to sort of combine all of the lower castes of Huxley's book, A Brave New World, and give them sort of the feeling of a worker, like workers. These are the people in society that function to do the tasks that have to be done, not by choice, but that out of necessity. They're not lacking necessarily in intelligence or IQ, but they are conditioned emotionally to not feel, and they're conditioned to do very mechanical. My movement is very mechanical until this one person, this one outlander comes and basically gives them breath or a sense of life.
It's called the Savage in the book. We called them the Outlanders, and we used 3 because we had 3 dances. And they came to the pool at the beginning, they saw what was going on, and one of them went to each dance, and they changed the choreography at each dance.
It's like you've been seeing in black and white or gray color, and when he has interaction with you, when he touches you, that's the first time you see color, and that is an experience that I wanted them to develop. It's a short moment in the piece, but throughout the piece they're curious about him too. There's a slight curiosity, but they end up going back to what they've been conditioned to.
My group is called the Alpha Group. They are aristocrats. Since I do classical ballet, I thought this would be an exceptional challenge for me. It is contemporary as well. And our piece is based on ritualistic physical pleasure. The dancers are at a party that is pretty much driven by the taking of the drug soma. So they are under the influence of a drug that gives them pleasure and makes them feel very relaxed. They express physical pleasure through just relating to each other on a superficial basis and don't really see the value or don't know what love really is. So the challenge there was to be able to create this ritualistic look to the piece, have it use the classical vocabulary, but still have a futuristic feel to it.
Keep calm, take soma.
I decided to make it be a real party and then showing what they do at this kind of thing. And it has kind of an orgiastic feel to it in a sense, but it's very classy. And then an outlander comes in, and this is a tribal person who is not part of this society. Her goal is to change these people. And she encounters one man, and she shows him what the value is in touch. While she's doing this, the other people in the cast, they don't know what to do. They first don't want to look at it, so I have them covering their eyes up. There's an obvious change. The outlander and the one male member of the cast who she starts to change, they go through the rest of the cast and they touch them, and then they release and they repeat some of the movements that are done by this couple. And so they give in momentarily. But at the very end, they just cannot break away from their conditioning.
Be calm. Take soma.
And they go back to their robotic kind of way of giving pleasure under the influence of the drug, except for the one man, and he has been changed irrevocably, and so he follows her.
We had close proximity between audience and performance in each location, and inside the Rhatigan Center, which was a circular space, and the audience was circular, the dancers were in this circle with a center area that nobody went in, but they were sitting in chairs right next to audience members.
When I auditioned for the piece, I remember saying that I was looking for strong technicians because I knew I wanted the movement to be technically challenging, which I think was accomplished, and I also needed them to be really strong actors. And so I ended up with a collection of people with more acting experience and people with more dancing experience, knowing that not until they were in an environment with people there, they would not fully understand what was going to be asked of them as performers. It's the most exciting for me because I think one of the hardest things to teach performers is artistry. To put them in situations where to be that close helps them understand performance on an entirely different level that they would not experience in a traditional theater venue. It becomes kind of a whole different emotional and psychological process for them too, to be that close, to know that their technique has to be strong also, as well as their character and focus, and that you can't hide it because you are so intimate and amongst people. As a performer, you have to find those connections and draw from something to make it honest and real for your audience. That to me is the experience that takes them to the next place of understanding what it is to be an artist, to be a strong actor, a strong character, that whatever that emotion you pull for, it's empathy, right? When we can relate, we may not have the same experience, but to find a way to be empathetic through their character that translates to a certain emotion to connect with an audience. I like to work on the spot. I do like to read a lot if it's based on a particular concept or story, which I did with Brave New World. I wanted to be the betas, so that certain caste system had a little more flexibility, that still had a little bit of their own individuality within the context of the Brave New World. So I had a set of 9 dancers, not counting the Outlander, that were betas. And I went with that because I wanted to be able to have groups of trios, or I liked that triangle feel that I wanted to occur in the dance. And also duets, which I knew when the Outlander came in that one of them would have a duet, then I would have an even number. I knew that the moment that the Outlander came into the space, that I wanted the dancers to be propelled together, yet to not touch, so we could start to see relationships being created without feeling, so to speak. The Outlander ended up with a lot of floor work, so as she came around the circle, there were definitely advantage and disadvantage points in the audience seating. Getting people to understand the benefit of a live performance can be challenging. I'm like, if we can just get people to the theater, I think they would understand. And doing something like Brave New World that puts people in natural environments is physical theater, dance, mime. A piece like Brave New World is the way to get people in and to understand the art form, because we are going into everyday people's environments versus expecting people to come line up to the theater. But I think people that may have experienced something like Brave New World then are more apt to come to the theater. So I think for dance as an art form today, these types of projects are essential.
Ladies and gentlemen, please follow your guide to your next destination.
The conclusion of the pool was the gist of it. And the gist of it is that these people are prepped, they're brainwashed, they're reduced to exactly their primary function and nothing more, and then they're sent out into the world. So at the end we had a recycle statement that said, the ones who are born become the doctors who are walking in the pool. The doctors become the programmers who are on the side of the pool programming them. And the programmers surprisingly switched places with 6 or 7 people in the audience who had been out in the world. And they were done. And they changed clothes, and they were in whites underneath. And we had a zapper, a bug zapper, a big standing pod that they walked into. And when the lights would flash, you'd see their silhouette inside, and a ball would roll out. And those balls, after they came out, were taken and placed back in the pool, swimming tubes in the pool, to restart the whole cycle again. Now, during this transitionary moment, we made a statement, and one of the Outlanders pressed her hand on one of the computers that was programming. And we see on the movie screen the things today that are beautiful, like a dog running down the beach, a family having a picnic, 2 lovers looking at each other. Just warm, positive images that she's saying, out there, that's what we have. Here, I don't see that. And they stopped her from showing more of it. So there was only a short burst, 20, 30 seconds, but the audience sees it, everybody sees it, and she decides, I don't want to be part of this world, and zaps herself and the ball rolls out. Now, because I'm an eternal optimist with all my work, the other 2 Outlanders took that ball that came out of her and coveted it, and they left. And a number of people from the cast from the Future Society left with them, looking for a better world. It was just the bones of a really good idea. It took me about 2 weeks to get to the conclusion that I was excited about what I saw and created with these friends, colleagues. I was very numb inside. like I'd never been before. It happens to the people who see an idea and invest in it and talk other people into doing it with them and coerce other people and rationalize it and get everybody. There's an investment there that has a cost. Because in the end, if you are risking, if it is new and you've never done it before and you've never seen it before, then there's a good chance of failure. And I think to some extent that weight is carried by the seed person, the source of the one who started the. I don't think that's necessarily true with success. I think success is a group effort. I think only through the collaboration of the people who worked on this project could this project work. It had to work because of how much effort and time and money went into it. And the enthusiasm really of the students is what carries it. This is their work. At this point, it's never been done before. They own this one as the original cast. There's always something exciting about that. And Brave New World was that. For the dance program in 2015, it was for that program to have this experience and to remember it for the rest of their lives. As it played out through the weekend, I was as amazed as they were. I just became audience as well. I was a spectator. I think sometimes, you just have to let things unfold, let things happen. If you could set the framework up with enough nudges and molding and ideas, it works. There has to be some faith. You try, you risk. And that's maybe the most important part, is that artists risk.